Welcome to the AI Checkpoints. Disclaimer. This content is generated by AI. We are diving deep today into, well, one of the most astonishing technological shifts, maybe ever, the adoption of AI chatbots. And we're not really interested in the hype you see online. We want to break down objective behavioral usage data, specifically internal message data shared by OpenAI researchers. And when you look at the sheer scale of this adoption, it's genuinely hard to wrap your head around.
It really is historic. I mean, think about this. By July 2025, ChatGPT surged to 700 million weekly active users.
700 million.
Yeah, that's roughly 10% of the world's adult population. For a completely new technology to hit that kind of global reach that fast,
Yeah.
well, there's just no precedent. None.
It's incredible. And those 700 million users, they're generating something like 18 billion messages every week. What makes this research so valuable, though, is how they measure that behavior. They didn't just ask people what they think they use it for, right?
Exactly. That's the crucial part. They use these novel, privacy-preserving, automated classifiers. These were run on de-identified message data. So no humans reading conversations. It means we're looking at objective behavior, the intent behind a message, the topic, whether it's work-related or not, all categorized automatically. It gets us past the biases you always find in, self-reported surveys where maybe people inflate how much they use it for work.
Right. People want to sound productive.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So this shows us how people actually weave AI into their daily routines.
Okay, so let's jump right into the core economic finding then, because this really seems to challenge the common narrative. We always hear about AI boosting workplace productivity, but this data shows something, well, different.
It's a pretty dramatic pivot, actually. Non-work-related messages grew way faster than work-related messages.
Yes,
So much so that by June 2025, these non-work messages made up over 70% of all consumer ChatGPT messages.
70%? Wow, that's up from what, about half the year before?
Yeah, it was 53% in June 2024, so that personal use category just exploded.
70% non-work? That strongly suggests the biggest economic impact maybe isn't happening in the office.
It points right at our personal lives.
Yeah.
It really shines a light on this concept of home production and the, frankly, enormous welfare gains happening outside of paid work.
Can you just quickly unpack home production for listeners who might not be familiar with that term?
Sure. So home production is basically all the valuable stuff you do that you don't get paid for. Think managing household budgets, planning a complex family trip, researching health stuff, writing personal emails, or maybe helping your kids with homework, tutoring them. What this data shows is AI becoming a massive time saver and efficiency booster in all that unpaid labor.
And these aren't just fuzzy feelings, right? There's actual economic value being estimated here.
Oh, absolutely. External research backs this up. Collins and Brynjolfsson, for instance, estimated U.S. users felt a consumer surplus of at least $97 billion in 2024 alone.
Just from using generative AI.
That was the value they placed on not having to give it up for just 1 month. $97 billion.
That's huge. Put that in perspective.
Well, that single month's value is roughly the annual GDP of, say, a medium-sized European country. It just underlines how much value is being created in areas traditional economics sometimes misses.
That's a staggering implied value. And importantly, it's not just because loads of new people are signing up and asking personal questions. The researchers looked at user cohorts, right? People who joined early versus later.
Yes, and that's a key insight. They found that messages per weekly active user consistently grew within every single cohort.
So even the early adopters are using it more and more over time.
Exactly. It means once you get started, you keep finding new uses for it, things you probably didn't even think of when you first signed up. And that seems to be fueling this sustained growth, mostly in these personal non-work directions.
Okay, so if 70% is non-work, what are people actually doing? The study identified the big three topics that dominate. Almost 80% of all use falls into these three buckets.
That's right. The top one is practical guidance at 29%. Then you have seeking information at 24% and writing also at 24%.
Practical guidance and seeking information, they sound pretty similar. How did the researchers separate those?
Yeah, it's a subtle but really important distinction. Seeking information is basically using it like a search engine.
Like asking for facts.
Exactly. What are the qualifying times for the Boston Marathon? Who was the 4th U.S. president? Things with a standard answer.
Okay.
Practical guidance, on the other hand, is highly customized. It's adaptive. This is where the AI gives you personalized help, like creating a workout plan tailored to you, or a recipe based on what's in your fridge, or, importantly, acting as a tutor that adapts to how well you're understanding something.
I know I've used it for explaining complex things multiple times, definitely contributing there. And they pulled out a specific detail within that practical guidance bucket, tutoring or teaching requests. How big was that?
It's remarkable. That specific use case accounts for 10.2% of all messages sent by users.
Wow, 1 in 10 messages is basically asking for education.
Yeah, it suggests that whole idea of personalized learning is really becoming a daily thing for millions of people.
Okay, let's shift to writing. That's the third big one. And it dominates work-related use, 40% of work messages. This is what everyone kind of expected, right? AI creating text.
It is the top work use, yes. But, and this is what they call the writing paradox, they found something interesting. About 2/3 of all writing messages, work or personal, aren't asking the AI to write something new from scratch.
They're not. What are they doing then?
They're asking it to modify text the user provides. So editing, critiquing, summarizing, translating.
Huh. So it's more like an editor than an author.
In many cases, yes. It points towards augmentation rather than full automation, at least for now.
Yeah.
The user provides the starting point, the context, and then uses the AI mostly for refining or reshaping it. We're using it to improve our own thoughts, maybe, not just generate new ones for important stuff.
That's fascinating, and it contrasts sharply with some of the things that get a lot of buzz, like coding.
Right. Computer programming, you hear about it all the time, is a prime target for AI.
Yeah.
But in reality, only 4.2% of messages. Relatively small.
And what about using it for companionship, like a chatbot friend or therapist?
Even smaller. Relationships and personal reflection was just 1.9% of messages. So while those uses exist, the day-to-day reality for most users is getting practical advice, learning stuff, and polishing their writing.
Okay, so that's what people are discussing. Let's look at how they're interacting. The study used a neat framework for user intent: asking, doing, or expressing.
Yeah, it's a useful way to slice it. Asking is basically seeking information or advice decision support.
Okay.
Doing is asking the chatbot to perform a task and produce something like draft that email, write some code.
Got it. And expressing.
That's just sharing views or feelings, no real information or task goal, maybe just venting or thinking out loud.
And how did those break down overall?
Asking leads the pack at 49%. Doing is close behind at 40%. And expressing is much smaller, just 11%.
And asking actually grew faster than doing over the year they studied.
It did, yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why is asking pulling ahead?
Well, it seems to come down to quality and satisfaction. Even though doing is still more common for work tasks, 56% of work messages are doing requests.
Like asking for that email draft.
Right. But the researchers found a big difference in perceived quality. Asking messages, the ones seeking advice or decision support, were consistently rated higher by their automated satisfaction classifiers.
How much higher? Was it a big difference?
Quite significant. The ratio of good to bad satisfaction ratings was 4.45 for asking messages. For doing messages, it was only 2.76.
Wow, okay. That's a substantial gap.
It really supports this model of AI as an advisor, a really effective tool for synthesizing information and helping you think through things.
Which fits perfectly with that co-pilot idea we hear so much about, AI as a thinking partner.
Exactly. And if asking leads to higher quality results, you can see why it's valuable, especially for, say, knowledge workers. As Aydin Talem has put it, AI acts as a co-pilot that gives advice and improves the productivity of human problem solving.
Better decisions.
That's the core output of asking. And making better decisions is what high-skill professional jobs are often about. It helps explain why asking is a bit more common for highly educated users in those well-paid jobs.
Okay, let's pivot to demographics. Some really interesting findings there, especially around the gender gap. It closed super fast.
Incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Early on, right after launch, something like 80% of active users had typically masculine first names, heavily skewed.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
But that gap just narrowed dramatically. By June 2025, the user base was almost at parity, actually slightly favoring typically feminine names at 52.4% of active users.
That is a remarkably quick shift for any major technology. What do you think drove that?
I think it points to two big things: accessibility and relevance. The fact that the main uses turn out to be practical guidance and writing help things that are pretty universally relevant, especially for managing personal life and home stuff, just made the tool immediately useful to a much broader group.
And did they see differences in how men and women, or those with typically masculine or feminine names, use the tool?
Yes, clear differences. Users with typically female names were relatively more likely to use it for writing and practical guidance. Users with typically male names leaned a bit more towards technical help, seeking information, and also multimedia tasks, like generating images.
Interesting. So the use cases align with the demographic shift.
Exactly. It underscores that its broad appeal comes from general communication and practical problem solving.
What about age? Any surprises there?
Well, the younger cohort, 18 to 25, still makes up the biggest chunk, nearly half of adult messages, 46%. But there's a clear link between age and using it for work. Work-related use was around 23% for under 26s, but it climbed over 30% for older groups in their prime working years.
Until retirement age, presumably.
Right, it dropped off significantly for the 66-plus group, down to 16%. Makes sense.
And this accessibility wasn't just limited to demographics, it was geographical too.
Absolutely. The study showed usage grew relatively faster in low and middle-income countries over the year. We're talking countries with GDP per capita between roughly $10,000 and $40,000. It really shows this tool isn't just a high-income country phenomenon, its utility is global.
Okay, let's tie some threads together now and focus back on the professional world. What does this all mean for work? We know higher education correlates with more work use.
Yes, definitely. Work use climbed from 37% for those with less than a bachelor's degree up to 48% for users with graduate degrees. And again, those highly educated users tended to lean a bit more towards asking that decision support function rather than just pure doing tasks. It reinforces that co-pilot idea in professional settings.
The study used Onet's generalized work activities, the GWAs, to break down what parts of jobs people were using AI for. Can you explain what GWAs are quickly?
Sure, GWAs are basically standardized labels for the core activities involved in any job. Instead of just saying lawyer, ONET might break it down into activities like getting information, interpreting law, making decisions, communicating with clients.
So it lets you see beyond the job title to the actual function AI is helping with.
Exactly. And the key finding here was remarkable consistency. Even across really different professional jobs, managers, scientists, engineers, administrative staff, the main ways they used AI for work were strikingly similar.
Really? What were those common functions?
Most work usage boiled down to two broad things, regardless of occupation. First, obtaining, documenting, and interpreting information. And second, making decisions, giving advice, solving problems, and thinking creatively.
And that second one, making decisions and solving problems that ranked highly across the board.
Consistently in the top two GWAs for almost every professional group they analyzed. The AI is fundamentally being used as a partner in thought processes, not just for automating routine tasks.
So pulling it all together, what's the big takeaway here?
I think it fundamentally reframes where ChatGPT's value lies right now. It's less about automating entire jobs or complex end-to-end tasks, and much more about its widespread, almost universal utility in supporting decisions, finding information quickly, and refining text both at home and at work. It's become this foundational tool for enhancing knowledge work, for helping us think better.
It really has established itself as the world's go-to knowledge co-pilot, and in record time.
It certainly seems that way.
Okay, that's a fantastic breakdown. Lots to think about there. Hit like and subscribe if you like the content. See you next time.
And maybe a final thought for you to ponder. If AI's most common and highest rated use is now this asking function, this decision support, what does that widespread reliance on machine-assisted thinking mean for our own critical thinking skills in the long run, especially when getting an answer is just a prompt away?